But we mentioned like so many of Princess Jellyfish's like endearing qualities and what makes it so special. So now I think we should transition into our discussion of Princess Jellyfish. And
awesome, I'm so excited.
I am too. And so let's explain the premise of Princess Jellyfish. Princess Jellyfish is the story about these group of adult otaku women who live in this place called Amamizukan, and they call themselves Amars, which kind of translates into meaning nuns, because they have dedicated and devoted their lives to leading a life without any men and without any interaction with the outside world. They shun the stylish, like they're all obsessed with their hobbies and they indulge in those obsessions. But one day, Tsukimi, our protagonist, she is the youngest of the residents of Amamizukan. She's 18 at the start of the story. She loves jellyfish. She's always been a fan of them since she was a kid. And one day she visits this pet shop and she notices a jellyfish they're selling, and it's a spotted jelly, and she loves spotted jellies. But she notices there's a moon jelly in the tank, and the mucus secreted by moon jellies is dangerous for spotted jellies because it'll suffocate them and kill them. And so she tries desperately but in vain to rescue the spotted jelly, but she's helped out by a beautiful woman, so she thinks, called Kuranosuke, who is very pretty and dressed very stylishly. And they buy the spotted jelly, who she names Clara, and they go back to Amamizukan. And then Tsukimi realizes the next day that the woman who saved her, Kuranosuke, is actually a man. And not only that, he is the son of a very wealthy and very famous politician and the nephew of the Prime Minister of Japan. So he's a pretty big guy in the social hierarchy. So he's from a completely different world from her. But he takes an interest in Tsukimi and the Amars and becomes friends with them. But then later, Amamizukan is in danger of being demolished due to a redevelopment project by Global City Create to construct like a hotel basically in that area. So they've been buying up all the old buildings and taking them down. And so the Amars have to like band together to find the finances to buy Amamizukan and protect their home. And they combine Tsukimi's love of jellyfishes and Kuranosuke's love of dresses into a plan to make a lot of money through fashion. And then they embark on their journey, learning about fashion, making clothes, and realizing who they want to make clothes for, why they want to make clothes for, and fight to protect who they love and the place that they all belong to, their home. And that's basically the premise. And there's all sorts of characters that come in and out of the series, and there's all sorts of story arcs and twists and turns. But that's basically the foundation of it. And I think we'll go into briefly explaining like how we got into the series and what our initial takeaways from it were when we discovered it. So, Morgana, would you like to describe how you got into the series and why you love it so much?
Yeah, so I had heard about it quite a bit because there was an anime, and I had not seen it, but I had friends who really liked it. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to check this out when it comes out. And so the first volume came out, and I read it, and like immediately was like, oh, this really is just as good as my friends have told me. Like, this is really, remarkable. It's relatable. It's funny. It's stylish. And I have a weakness for kind of, I don't know that I would classify it as a romantic comedy, but it has a lot of the same beats as a romantic comedy. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it. It's also, and this is something I've talked about it when I've written about Tokyo Tarareba Girls, and I've talked about it on Manga Machinations as well, but Higashimura has this amazing ability to kind of poke fun at things and kind of make fun of Tsukimi and the Amars, but it's not mean. It seems like it's coming from a place of experience, like she's making fun of herself, that I really appreciate. And it's hilarious. She has an excellent sense for slapstick. I was talking before about how I did a lot of things in college, and one of the things I did was clowning. Quite a lot of it. My circus concentration was in clowning. So I have a real appreciation for anybody who can pull off a gag really well, and I think that she does that, and without taking away from the drama or the emotion of the story as a whole. There are moments of extreme comedy, but they are to balance out these very real struggles that these women are having and these emotional ties that they're not sure how to navigate as they, embark on this very ambitious business venture, and, they're navigating their relationships to each other and their relationships to the outside world, and kind of, I don't want to say learning how to be people, but like learning how to be part of a community, which they've kind of sequestered themselves away from for a very long time. So it's a beautiful story about growth, but not growth that requires them to change in a harmful way. I think, Kuranosuke tries very hard to kind of not give them all makeovers, but like really like boost their confidence. And in some ways you can see that as like, oh, here's this guy is coming in and telling these girls how to be girls, right? But I think the way it's approached and the way he kind of talks about it is like, here's your armor, right? Here's the way that you can present yourself and people will take you seriously. And so there's like, I don't know that it's a very deep social commentary that's being made, but there's a certain sense that there's an awareness of who these women are and what they need. And it's not that they need to be different. It's that they need someone to listen and to appreciate their point of view. And he's kind of facilitating that. So I don't know. I have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of feelings on Princess Jellyfish.
I do as well. I know what you mean. But yeah, like this whole idea of like becoming comfortable in yourself and what you love and being able to go out into the world with your head on high and not be afraid to be yourself is like a huge part of Princess Jellyfish's appeal to me as well. And I'll go into my experiences later, but I want to touch upon Colton's experience with Princess Jellyfish first.
Yeah, so this was my first time reading Princess Jellyfish, and not my first time, I guess, experiencing it, because I had actually watched all of the anime a little while back, couple of years ago at this point, and I at first I thought it was fine. But for some reason, I don't remember it really clicking with me all that much. It was just kind of something that my friend really wanted to show me, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Because I'm pretty open to whatever. And I thought it was really cute, and I thought it was fun. But like I said, it just wasn't something I really didn't think too much about, other than, hey, this is entertaining or whatever. And it wasn't until I started reading it like a couple months back for the show that I think when I first started reading it, I thought it was interesting, and I don't know. I think it took a while for me to I guess kind of understand it and what it was going for and like where the story was going. And at this point, I said it on Twitter, but like I'm pretty open to reading more of Higashimura's stuff. I really wanted to read Tokyo Tarareba Girls because I had seen so many people post about that, but a lot of my friends were very insistent that I read Princess Jellyfish first, so I just kind of hopped onto that since I was kind of the most familiar with that. And I don't know that I have like a lot to say about it other than like I really enjoyed it, and I was really invested in the character arc of Sakimi in particular. Just this person who like has such a low opinion of herself that like, like every time she talks about how like, she can't be as pretty as Kuranosuke, or like I could never be somebody like that. You're just kind of yelling at your book like, no, you're beautiful. You don't know how beautiful you can
right?
be. You're you're worth more than you think you are. And it's just like, I really hate to like say how relatable that is. Like, it's just so.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's kind of its success, right? Is that we all look at ourselves in, and compare ourselves, even though we would never do that to other people.
We're all very like critical of ourselves and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, we would never do that to other people. We think, our friends, we think all our friends are great, and we think they're beautiful, and we think they're funny and interesting, but like for ourselves, we don't have the same, filter. But yeah, it was. I agree. I mean, first of all, Tsukimi's adorable, and every single cover of the manga, she's wearing some adorable outfit, and I just can't stand it. Every single one, I was like, look at how cute this is. I wanna eat her. She's so cute.
Higashimura is just a genius at coming up with some beautiful dresses and designs.
Yeah.
Like, all the dresses that Kuranosuke wears are just amazing, and all the dresses Tsukimi wears are really beautiful. Like, I really love how knowledgeable she is of fashion, that she can come up with such distinctive outfits and make so many different ones over the course of the series that characters wear. Like, Kuranosuke is wearing something different in every chapter, and they all look like distinctive and memorable and something that you would expect like a fashionable person to wear.
Yeah, that's something I think shoujo and josei mangaka have a real advantage as artists, is that they're really, really good at or they should be really good at fashion, because that's something that's very, I think, central to a lot of women's lives. You know, whether we want it to be or not. I mean, a lot of the angst that the Amars have is that they are not into fashion, and so that kind of defines their life too. So I do think that, and it would have been very ambitious for Higashimura to go into a story about fashion design if she didn't know anything about fashion. But she is also extremely fashionable. I don't know if you've ever seen any photos of her,
Yeah.
but she's got some great style.
She's a very stylish woman.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I love looking at her and then looking at her work and then being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see it.
I mean, look, if they're going to get Araki to do stuff for Gucci, I don't know why they can't seek Higashimura out,
They should.
Right? I know, I would buy that. I mean, I wouldn't buy that because I wouldn't be able to afford it, but I would want to buy that.
If they made one of those metamorphosis transforming jellyfish dresses from the final chapters, I would definitely buy that.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah, I kind of want one too.
It'd be great. We could have our own fashion show, the Manga Mavericks fashion show.
Man, I would have loved if they'd done an event where they did the fashion from the series and actually put on a real jellyfish fashion show. That would have been an amazing event.
That would be so good.
Great.
I would love to see that.
But what I really love about Princess Jellyfish as well is, like, it is really clear that this is a combination of so many different things that Higashimura has a lot of knowledge in and a lot of experience in. Because she did used to make clothes when she was young, when she was high school. She's had experience making clothes. She was very interested and passionate about fashion. And when she was a middle schooler or high schooler, she was also a jellyfish otaku. She loved jellyfish, and so a lot of her love for jellyfish is reflected in Tsukimi. But also, like, the Amars themselves are very clearly based on not only herself, but the people around her. Like, when she's talking about her staff in one of the bonus chapters at the end of the volumes, like, she's mentioning how every one of them is an otaku in their own way, that they either love Korean actors or the Takarazuka Review, and they have all these parties where they share their nerdy interests with each other. Like, they watch a Takara play, and then the Korean star, and all that. And then her husband is a huge fan of voice actors.
One of the omake at the end, she talks about her husband says, now that the baby's asleep, let's get drunk and watch anime openings.
Yeah.
And I totally took a picture of that and posted it on Twitter, and that has been that's my most popular tweet I've ever made, because people are just like, yes, I relate to this. Yeah, I was like, it's true though. I was like, I do this. Yeah, no, it's very relatable stuff.
Like, one of the reasons I love Higashimura so much as a mangaka is because I can see so much of her personality and passion in her work. And the place of love that she's coming from in the story for, like, what she's writing about is just so abundantly clear and endearing. And the fact that she has such an interesting life experience that she even during the making of Princess Jellyfish, she got hooked on a Korean actor and made several trips to Korea to like buy a book, a photo book of him. And then the story of how she was in love with Morishita, like the 1992 Silverman's finalist in the Barcelona Olympics, and she like was obsessed with every news coverage of him, and then she pretended to be a news reporter and organized and like so she could find out his location when he arrived in flight in her town, and then she went and like she basically went and interacted with him, got his autograph and stuff, but then also like helped him find a hotel or something. It's like she went to such lengths to kind of meet where she has, like, she is a true, she has experience being a true obsessed, like, fan. So, like, when she's describing, like, how powerful the obsessions and how in the zone they get when these characters are indulging in their sessions, like Tsukimi going into, like, her serious mode when she's, like, really thinking about Jellyfish and making the Jellyfish designs, or, like, when Maya is going on her big screeds about the Three Kingdoms, or Chieko's mom is talking about how much she loves the Korean actors. Like, you can tell that she is coming from that with a place of love, from someone who knows what it is to feel so passionately about something and to love it so much that you'd go to such extreme lengths to enjoy the hobby and to enjoy what you love. And before we move on to talking more about Princess Jellyfish, I'll also recount my experience and how I discovered the series. So I was aware of it from when the anime first came out in late 2010. Really early 2011 is when it really caught my eye, because there was a review on Toon Zone by Carl Olsen that really shed a spotlight on the series and described it as something that, was not something you normally see from anime. There's so many anime about, like, anime fans and otaku, but Princess Jellyfish was really the only one that was about a group of women, and not just a group of women, but a group of women with diverse interests. And that interested me as someone who always liked reading and watching stories about women. And also what intrigued me was Kuranosuke as a character, because I was always drawn to queer characters and characters who challenge gender norms. So Princess Jellyfish was on my radar after reading that review, though it still took me until a few years till I watched it. I watched it in like my freshman year of college when it got added to Netflix, or it was on Netflix. Back when Funimation had most of their stuff on Netflix before they took it all down for their own service. And I watched through that in a single day, and I was just in love with it because it is the kind of story that hit a bunch of buttons of things that I like watching, but, don't get enough of, like a story about adult women that was a diverse group of them, as stories about a story that features like characters that challenge gender norms. And, the anime is also just really brilliantly acted, really funny and charming with its comedic timing. And so from then on, like immediately after watching the anime, I sought out the manga, which at the time was not officially licensed. So I sought out the scanlations, and I read through those pretty quickly, and I caught up, I think at the point that I caught up, it was like just when Kai Fish was introduced. It was at the point when he tells them that he wants to buy not only the 6 dresses that they're doing at the exhibition, but Tsukimi as well. And so that was around the point I caught up with. And so I kept up with the scanlations after that. And what they did was that they released it through volumes. They didn't do it a monthly release. They waited for the volume to come out in Japan before they scanlated it. And so there was only 2 volumes a year. So it was a long, agonizing wait every time for the next volume. But, Princess Jellyfish was like my favorite series, basically, favorite series I was keeping up with basically for a couple of years there before finally, and I was so overjoyed when this happened. When Kodansha USA announced the license and it got added to Crunchyroll, and then Crunchyroll manga had the entire selection. And so from then on, they added volume 16 they had up to volume 16 on Crunchyroll manga after that. And then the final 3 chapters, they did on Comixology, and they didn't put those in Crunchyroll manga for some reason, but, of course I bought that up. When the volumes came out, I bought those up, immediately. I was so overjoyed that Akiko Higashimura's works were finally coming over here. The Princess Jellyfish was finally being published, because, it's one of my favorite series, because at the core of it, it is a series about being true to yourself and being comfortable in who you are and being able to find people who love you for who you are. And that meant a lot to me, alongside a whole bunch of other themes that I'd find incredibly compelling, and the characters, which I love, and love their character arcs, and of course, how unique and refreshing the premise and the combination of different things that I enjoy in stories was. So I just was completely in love with all those factors. I remember, it was shortly after the manga got it added to Crunchyroll manga. I was at New York Comic Con, and I remember telling a Crunchyroll rep that, I was so overjoyed that they added, Princess Jellyfish, and if they had plans to add any more of, her manga to Crunchyroll manga. And they mentioned that, they were aware of some like Kakakakashikajika, but they didn't. Ultimately, Crunchyroll manga hasn't added more of her stuff, but, shortly after that, in the next year, Kodansha USA licensed Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls, which I was overjoyed about too. So, I'm so happy Akiko Higashimura is now, incredibly popular mangaka in, the Western fandom, because before, Kodansha released the manga, people might have been aware of Princess Jellyfish through the anime, but no one was really talking about her or her work. But after Princess Jellyfish and Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls come out, now everyone seems to be aware of her. Everyone knows that she's awesome, and there's such a hunger for her work now that I feel more confident than ever that we'll get more of it in the future, which makes me extremely happy. And I'm extremely happy that, Princess Jellyfish has done so well over here.
Yeah, I think they're gonna put out a box set of Princess Jellyfish, which is great because I haven't bought it yet. Not all of it.
And I'm kicking myself because I do not regret buying these volumes day and date when they came out, but man, that box set looks good. Same thing with the Silent Void box set. I'm I don't regret buying this and supporting this, but man, I love this box set. Looks great. Do I want to double dip? I have to consider it now.
Yeah, I know. I didn't, and I hadn't bought a Silent Voice before either, so I got the box set of that, and I'm kind of glad I waited. But, if they ever do box sets of literally anything else I own, I'm screwed. Because I usually get it all. I'm pretty good about, making sure I get everything. I have a copy of Princess Jellyfish Volume 5 because it was damaged at work. So it was we're told to donate or destroy damaged books when they come in.
Oh, no.
So I was I'll just donate it to myself.
Good idea.
But that's the only one I have. I was eventually I'll get the rest of them. And then they announced the box set, and I was excellent. I'll just do it that way. But yeah, and so I think that speaks to, Higashimura's popularity quite a bit, is if they're thinking of putting it in a box set, that must mean that it sells, is my assumption. That's my guess. And then we're getting a lot more for work soon, so. And I don't know if you guys have read Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls yet. I definitely do think you should read Princess Jellyfish first. I think Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls is a very different story. But man, I'm obsessed with it.
Well, I definitely plan on reading it.
Yeah, I've bought every single volume, when they came out, but I haven't, read too far into it. But, after reading Princess Jellyfish, I'm you know what? Now it's time. I need more. My Higashimura hunger has been rekindled, and I need more now. So, yeah, I've seen so much praise lavished on Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls, which makes me really happy and intrigued, so I gotta get on that as well.
I mean, like I said, I'd seen so much praise for it that, I almost wanted to read that first.
Yeah. I think it's better that you did wait, because it's more cynical than Princess Jellyfish, and it's very much a Higashimura manga, but it's definitely for an older, audience, an older, more cynical audience.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I think ultimately it will turn out hopeful. That's my guess. I'm keeping up with the print volume, so I'm 4 volumes in. And every single time I find myself crying. This isn't fair. But it's really wonderful. She's just so good at doing that thing where she sees an ill of society, being an otaku or being an unmarried 33-year-old, and she just is I'm going to zero in on this and make fun of it, but I'm going to do it with, like, compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's a really hard balance to strike, and I'm constantly impressed with her ability to do that, and with her ability to put that into a plot that is also engaging. You know, usually creators are really good at a few things, but they definitely have a flaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I haven't really found her flaw yet. It might just be because I'm obsessed right now, and I think she's great, but I have a hard time figuring out what it is that she's missing. Maybe she's got really bad breath or something. Maybe that's her, like, you know, something I'd never know.
I mean, I guess the only thing that, like, I had trouble with was, and this is probably just, like, this just comes down to, like, my taste in, like, humor, but, like, I don't know, it's weird that, like, this might be weird to say, I don't know if I can't remember too many times where, like, because I really enjoyed reading Princess Jellyfish, but the weird thing is, I don't remember, like, laughing at a lot of it.
You're alone, man.
Not that I didn't think it was funny. It's just, like, I think a lot of it comes down to, like, and she's not, like, super reliant on it, but, like, you know, she does reference a lot of, like, really specific old, like, Japanese pop culture from time to time that, like, kind of goes over my head. And
that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
This is coming from somebody who's a huge fan of Gintama as well, so, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I don't know, like, I can't say that, like, it made me, I honestly, I think the one character that really always made me laugh out loud was Hanamori.
Yes, Hanamori is amazing.
Like, I'm conflicted because, like, there'd be times where I thought, I kind of wish Higashimura would just do a series about Hanamori, but, like, you also really get your fill of Hanamori. Like, I feel like if I got more of him than I got in Princess Jellyfish, I feel like I'd get tired of him, almost.
Yeah, he's a fun gag, but I don't know if he could sustain a whole series. Maybe, like, a couple chapters. Like a day in the life.
Yeah, a short gag comedy manga, I think Hanamori would be good for. But Hanamori is one of the simpler characters in that he doesn't, like, have a deep, like, emotional grounding or foundation for what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of the other characters, even the extreme characters like Maya, like, there's some pain rooted in, like, their past experiences that drives them to act how they do. But Hanamori doesn't really have experiences in his past that, like, you know, keep him guarded or keep him acting a certain way. He just is who he is, and he makes no he doesn't hide that at all. Like, he will say such boldly, like, inappropriate things with a straight face, or boldly insensitive things with, like, a straight face, and very seriously, and not, like, really care. And he's also very quick to change his mind, or, you know, throw someone else under the bus. Like, when he makes a reservation for Tsukimi Achu at this fancy restaurant, but then he decides to take the reservation for himself and Nisha instead, and, like, throw Tsukimi and Shu into a different balcony place, which has a lot of wind. Like, he's a pretty selfish guy.
Yeah, he is pretty quick to start rooting for the winning team, whoever that may be.
He's pretty self-centered. He's like he mostly thinks about kind of like himself and like what he can get out of things. Like, and he makes decisions that can often like be to the detriment of others. Like when he buys like that 500,000 yen Buddha,
oh my god,
causes them to lose so much money.
I think also if you gave him the kind of depth that all the other otaku have, he wouldn't be a good character anymore. Like I feel like I'm not interested in his deep dark secrets, right? Like that's not his function.
Yeah. The story isn't about him.
Yeah, if you gave him that, I mean, in one way, it's nice to have him as kind of a foil to show that like obsession to the degree that he has exists, you know, outside of a place like Amars, right?
Yeah,
like,
and this is another theme of the series that enamored me and made me fall in love with it, is that it really emphasizes that everyone is a little bit of a nerd in their own way. Everyone has something that they're passionate and they love, maybe even to an obsessive degree. And it's not just like the stereotypical idea of what a geek is. Like, you can be like a nerd about anything, whether it be Mercedes-Benz businesses, whether it's like idol groups like the Prime Minister, whether it's fashion like Kurenosuke, everyone is a little bit of a nerd. Everyone has like something they're really knowledgeable about, that they're really passionate about, and that they can take to extremes sometimes, but like is such a important and core fundamental part of their identity and gives them so much joy. And in an interview with Sukemune, Higashimura's editor, like that Barnes and Noble did, that Bridget Alverson did, like Sukemune said that the crux of Princess Jellyfish is that you're not alone and you can talk about what you love with others. And like that's what makes the series special to me, is that like the Amars as a community is like a place where all these different women who are like really big nerds of us different things, like they have some shared interests, but they all have that one specific thing that they're extremely passionate about. And they can all come together and they can have this space where they can enjoy their hobbies without judgment and without like discrimination, because everyone there knows just how much that thing means to them. And they respect that. And there's one powerful scene that I remember is like when Kurenosuke is like trying to take Chieko's dolls to sell them off. Banba like just taps on the shoulder and says like, stop what you're doing. Like you may not understand this, but to Chieko, those dolls are like her family. Like they're important to her. And like this series really makes it clear that, you know, the Amars and, you know, all the other people who have like streaming sessions as depicted in the manga, like they don't need to grow out of like these hobbies or abandon what they love to fit in with a society. They can become comfortable in who they are and in what they love and go out in the world and like hold their heads high in sharing what they love with other people and being themselves. And that's what I really love about the series, is that the series really emphasizes it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be a little nerdy. Everyone's a little bit nerdy, and you should embrace that and not be afraid to find people who want to engage with you and share those interests with you, even if they might not have those interests themselves. Like the Sakimi and Shu relationship. Like Shu, at the beginning of the series, doesn't know anything about Jellyfish, but he becomes enamored and fascinated with Sakimi's passion and love for it, and falls in love with her because he's drawn to like her passion for Jellyfish. And so it's stuff like that. It's like you don't have to hide who you are to fit in with society. You can be yourself. And I think that's just such an important message.
And it does that, you know, it has that message, which is, you know, it's not an uncommon message, right? You see a lot of media that has this, like, be yourself kind of message, but it does it in a way that's not, like, super trite. Like, because it has all these different threads going through it, you don't even really think that much about what the overall theme is. I mean, you know what it is, right? Like, you get the sense, but that's not really what you're focusing on as a reader, which I think is really also speaks to the strength of it, you know, as a piece on a whole.
Yeah, and Higashimura isn't didactic with the message. She doesn't like hit you over the head with how she's doing and like how she's writing the story. Like, she just throws out like, hey, here is the Prime Minister. He is kind of a gossip. He really likes idols, but like he is like head of state in Japan and stuff, and he has these nerdy interests. And like, she contrasts the Amars with other characters in the story that are like out in society, but they all have their own interests as well that you can recognize. You can see that, oh, you know, like all these people, like they have something, you know, quirky. They have their own quirks. They have their own like unique interests, but they all can be together as part of a community and society. They don't have to hide themselves away. And I think that's important for like people who, you know, might think that their hobby or their area of interest is like something that no one else would understand, like, or is something that'd be weird, but to like really feel like, yeah, dude, there is someone who is willing to share and talk about what you love with you.
Yeah, and you know, Higashimura did a good job of kind of underlining that point by having all the women in Amars, none of them just like anime, right? Or like something very typical. They all have very specific, very niche interests.
Specific and distinct.
Yeah, and even though they're all very different, they all kind of share in this collective obsession. They see everything through the lens of their own interest. but they can still kind of relate to each other, even if they can't really function as well, out in the world, or they think they can't function as well out in the world. So yeah, that was one thing. I kind of expected going into it, oh, okay, they're all like really into anime, or like they all read a lot of manga, and like they do have those interests too. There's kind of there's the understanding that they know about these things, but they're not. That's not the focus. The focus is way more specific than that. I mean, like being a jellyfish otaku is such a like strange. Like I would never have like thought of that kind of interest as an otaku interest.
Or being a train otaku.
Yes, yeah. I love Bamba.
Yes.
I love everything about her. She's amazing. Apparently, it's very popular for kids in Japan to be really into trains when they're little. This is from what I understand. So I wonder if it's just like I wonder if a lot of people are really into trains. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know how common that is.
I just kind of assumed that most kids in Japan were just all about bug catching.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
But that's another thing I appreciate about the series is that they aren't like all anime otaku. Like all of the women are fans of different things. They have different areas of interest. And because they have different areas of interest, they have different skills that all contribute really well when they, start up the clothing line, when they start up Jellyfish. Like everyone has their own role that they're really good at. Maya, has a great figure for being like a model in a different way that Kurinosuke has. Like Chieko's expertise making kimonos comes in hand really well when they're making dresses, when they're stitching dresses. Nomu's experience with, making designs and coding for dolls comes in handy really well.
I'm also really impressed, and I think this is something that is very challenging in all comics. There's such a range of body types.
Yes.
Which is really gratifying. I think that's not something I see a lot. And even like, even the thinner characters have a range of body types, right? Like it's not just like, okay, we have some fat characters finally, which is great. I think that, and none of it is like played as a joke, right? Like Chieko is kind of round, but she's like never the butt of a fat joke, really. Like it doesn't really go that far. There's an understanding that, okay, this is her shape and this is the way she looks and how do we work with that? And there is a little bit of like teasing Tsukimi about her like chubby arms.
Yeah, especially when she starts working more closely with Kai and his employees and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his employees bully her about that for sure.
Well, and I think there's the distinction too, whereas like Kai's whole business is about conforming.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And about being the same and about looking the same. Whereas even if Kurinosuke will tease her about her arms and like tell her to put on a stole so that nobody can see that, or like the dress won't zip all the way, it doesn't fit her properly. He's like, okay, put something over it, it's fine. There's a like, okay, this is what we're working with, and you don't have to change. We'll adapt. We can make this work. And part of that is just the nature of being kind of an ad hoc small company versus being a giant corporation. But that's kind of a commentary too on how, like, on the one hand, we're constantly being told like this is the way to look good. It's the only way to look good. Whereas you have Jellyfish and they're like, this is the way to be comfortable and look good. And you can do this no matter where you're at. You can adapt. It's all about adapting. I feel like I keep finding more themes as we're talking. I'm like, wow, I never thought about that.
There are a lot of themes in the series. Like, that contrast between Vidi and what their clothes are made for. Like, the emptiness that Tsukimi notices in their clothes because their clothes are all about appearance and nothing more. There's no reason why these people are aspiring to wear these clothes. And these clothes are all about selling the product and fantasy of looking like elegant, but not like really about making someone satisfied or happy with how they look, because the fashion trends are always changing and it's just this endless cycle of having to buy clothes and discard clothes to keep up with the trend. Whereas with Jellyfish and their model, what Kurinosuke eventually realizes when, Chieko tells him about like how despondent and how kind of unenthusiastic the Amars have become, like making the clothes that Nomu has told her, what's the point? It's not like we can wear these clothes anyway. That makes Kuranosuke realize that, they need to think about clothes that the Amars would want to wear, and what would the Amars want to wear. And that's an entire process where not only him, but Gigi kind of spearheads this and tries to figure it out by like taking the Amars to like a clothing store to like try and buy clothes and figure it out that, what is it that we want, that we feel comfortable in? What are clothes that, it doesn't feel like we're putting on experiences. We just can be ourselves, and we can be adaptable depending on the situation we're in. And that's how they come up with the metamorphosis jellyfish clothes that, can undergo different changes depending on the situation you're in. And you can adjust it in different ways. It's flexible. It's machine washable. Yeah. It's, really convenient. And it's not it's like clothes to help you, be comfortable and be who you are. And like, it's sticking to what the Amars want and what they want in their clothing. And also something that's broadly appealing and broadly accessible and affordable in a way that Avidi's clothing line and the ephemerality of what that looks like, and of what looking fashionable and what be staying stylish and trendy, and how that is not sustainable or something that gives lasting happiness or comfort or just, flexibility.
Yeah, it's more, it's you working for your clothes as opposed to your clothes working for you. And being comfortable in what you're wearing in more ways than one, not just physically comfortable, but also confident to a measure of confidence.
Exactly. I think that throughout the series, Tsukimi is admiring Kuranosuke for his confidence, and that he can wear any type of clothes and he feels like himself in them. Where Tsukimi wears, fancy or stylish clothes, and she feels that she doesn't feel right in them. Even if other characters say, "Oh man, you look so beautiful, Tsukimi," but she doesn't feel comfortable in them. She doesn't feel like herself.
Yeah.
So it's all about, it's entire journeys throughout the series for Tsukimi to figure out what she wants in her clothing. Like, what clothes would she feel comfortable in? And that's just a fascinating part about her journey. But I also really like this idea that, again, when we get into this contrast between Avidi and Jellyfish, and how they run themselves as business. Like, Kuranosuke, even though he has a passion for fashion, doesn't really know much about how the business works. And so as the series goes on, like, they increasingly realize, we need to invest a lot of money in this and for a return that we might not get back. And that really culminates ultimately when they have to, spend an extreme amount of money at a point where, money is so tight that they don't have a lot. They're kind of going into depth here to get this space at the exhibition, and they've sunk so much money and time into it, and no one buys their dresses. And we see that later on a macro scale with Avidi's clothing line, when they have so much excess stock of clothes that they don't sell, that they don't even bother to put them into outlet stores or like just sell them to discount them or do any sales. Like, they just burn them because it's all about keeping the demand for the clothes high, so they can't saturate the market with the clothes. And so it's like they burn money to make money is like the real powerful line there. And the struggle to earn money and doing what you love and then losing sight of what you love because you're just in the pursuit of money is such a core theme of the series. Because even earlier in the series, as they're making dresses, like, the Amars get burned out because they're not enjoying what they're doing anymore. And like, even though they're just doing this to make money, but they're not really getting anything in return, and it's not really making them happy. And then on a macro scale, we see later with Kai that he started out making money and like having interesting clothes as a means of survival, like as a means of getting him and Fayong noticed and adopted. Like, he noticed that how one of his fellow siblings at the orphanage, how, they got noticed because they were wearing a collared shirt. And he took that to heart. And so he made an effort to dress fashionably. He took an interest in clothes to like take the clothes that people were throwing away, taking away the waste that they were leaving. And, he repurposed them as things that they could sell at the orphanage's shop. So he took the waste of other people and then made something new out of it. But as he became more successful in the finance world, he became more wasteful. And he lost sight of like what he wanted. Like there's this powerful moment is like where he's thinking to himself, like, do I enjoy making clothes? And like he doesn't really have an answer for that. It's just like business for him. It's just like this empty money-making cycle. And then Fayong later tells Kurenosuke it's kind of like this Chinese legend, which is basically like this idea of the Ouroboros, where it's like, this monster that eats everything in sight. And when it's done eating everything, when it's done consuming anything, it has nothing left, so it starts eating itself. And it's an endless empty cycle where you just want more and more and more money, but you lose sight of like what your actual goal is, what happiness you wanted to achieve. And Kai ultimately realizes that too late, and he gets kicked. His company crashes thanks to the Chinese Black Monday crash, and his American investors, buy up his company. He gets kicked out, and he's basically left with nothing after, accumulating so much wealth. It's all gone in an instant. And Fayong, meanwhile, realizes this emptiness a lot sooner. And she, leaves Kai and she goes back to work in the orphanage. And there's this powerful scene where we see that she is reusing like old table sheets as cloths and stuff. Like she's not, in sharp contrast to the waste of Avidity, of burning like entire tons of clothes and just burning them up. Like she is recycling like these clothes and these sheets, transforming them, putting them to new use. She's not like destroying old things. She's transforming them into something new. And that's just such a powerful message, I think, that it's like to not be wasteful and like to think about how to take something that isn't useful anymore and turn it into something new, or take something that, can't be used in its current form and use it for something else, which is what eventually, Kurenosuke and Tsukini realize should be the theme of the jellyfish dresses, is that something that can transform depending on the situation, that has more than one use, and that can be reusable and sustainable.
It's really amazing how much content there is when I'm sure you could do this with a lot of series, a lot of literature, but when you like break it down into all these tiny scenes, like you're talking about Fayong and what she was doing with the cloths, and like that's not a long scene. There's not a lot going on there, but there's so much that can be read in that like simple action that she's doing, that simple way she's decided to subvert, what Kai was doing. It's really, with just a few panels, right? With just, you kind of get this sense of a greater concept out of that simplicity.
Yeah, and I really love Higashimura as a writer because she has such a concrete idea of the theme she wants to explore in her story and crafts it in such a way to enhance every aspect of that story. Like every plot line in the story all ties back in, feeds back into that like overarching themes that she's trying to explore. Colton, like you mentioned in one of your tweets, like how you noticed that everything in a particular chapter all fed back into that whole burning money, wasting money to accumulate wealth, like putting a bunch of money at risk in the hopes of accumulating more money. Like in that same chapter where we see Kai burn all those clothes, we also see like Hanamori, it's actually a later point where it's like Fayong takes Kurenosuke to the warehouse where she shows him all the clothes to be burned. And in that same chapter, we see Hanamori like lose all his money in gambling in an attempt to, make back so much more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she complements like she complements like her plot lines by contrasting them together and uniting them with the same team, and a team developed over a long period of time. Like Tsukimi realizing and kind of trying to figure out like what she wants in clothes and like why she's making clothes and what she hopes to get out of them is contrasted in this chapter with this other character called Io, where she learns his story and how, he also he started up like making a fashion brand with his friends, but he left them behind to join a Vidi. And now he's just making clothes, but he doesn't seem particularly happy. And so his story is contrasted with Tsukimi, and at the end of that chapter, she sees the reason that she's making clothes. Like, she sees all her friends wearing her dresses on TV, showing signs of support for her as she's about to embark on the plane to Singapore. And so, that kind of sells home the moment that of her character development, of her realization that, this is the reason that I'm making clothes. It's not for the sake of making clothes. It's not for the sake of making money in of itself. It's for the sake of my friends. It's for the home that I live in. Like, that's the reason we started making these clothes and the reason we wanted money. And that's the reason that I'm continuing to make clothes and why I'm making the sacrifice and leaving them behind to go to Singapore for them. It's just such a powerful moment of character development, but also, again, ties into this whole overarching theme of money that's being explored throughout through the entire series, and money versus passion and creativity and what you love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one of the themes, really.
Yeah. And I appreciate too that it kind of started out like that with these reflections on, marriageability and attractiveness, and it never, I don't want to spoil anything, but it doesn't really focus on that. It does, like, there's a theme, right, that runs through it of marriageability and, her relationship with Shu, but it kind of ends really open-ended in those terms, which, as a reader at first I was like, this is really frustrating. I want some, like, romantic payoff.
Yeah, I felt the same way, but I was legitimately surprised with how things ended. I can't say I really saw that coming. I really was expecting like a marriage by the time the series was over,
or at least some kind of consummation of a relationship, right? Like there's a lot of like will they, won't they stuff going on, and there's the engagement to Shu in that relationship, and
yeah,
there's the relationship with Kuronosuke, and it's all kind of just, like Kuronosuke like realizes his feelings, and then it's the end. Like it doesn't really go beyond that. And again, as a reader, that was frustrating in many ways, but I think that ultimately was a good way to end it.
Yeah, for me in particular, I'm usually not a big fan of the kind of like will they, won't they, like love triangles kind of stuff. That kind of stuff I just don't really find very interesting usually. So I really appreciate that, like, I don't want to say that stuff took like a back seat to everything else, but like I guess like we said, like we're saying, it wasn't the focus, and like there was enough of it there to where it didn't overstay its welcome, and I was actually kind of like invested in it. But I also realized that's also not, it really wasn't like the entire point of the story. So I think it was there just enough for me to actually want to see like where that went. And even if it was kind of left open-ended, I kind of like where we left things, personally.
Yeah, and it's something that she does, again, not giving any spoilers, but in Tokyo Tarareba Girls too, the whole plot is that Rinko, the main character, has turned 33, and she and her friends have decided that they're too old to still be single, and they need to get married before the 2020 Olympics. So the theme is romance and marriage. But it's really not about that, even though that's kind of the goal. It's more about, like, in many ways the same as Princess Jellyfish, is kind of like an exploration of self and what do you want and what can you see happening in your life, and how do you define what happens to you in your life, and how do you prevent other people from defining you too? Because I think a lot of the themes of romances are, how does this romance define this person? And that's not really how life works, right? So there's an authenticity to it as well. It's like, it's when you're looking for romance, or when you're looking for a partnership, it's not just about that romance. There's a lot of stuff that you're doing internally, and a lot of stuff that's going on with you as a person that doesn't really come to the surface in a lot of romance titles or titles that have romance in them. It's more like, oh, look, and then they fell in love and they went on their way. Or there's a horrible, like, love triangle, which I also usually hate. I was actually very frustrated with a lot of I think, again, like you said, it kind of takes a back seat. Or there's just enough of it that it's not frustrating and you're kind of invested.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of it that I was just like, why are you doing this? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why do you even like this guy? I don't understand.
It's weird in that I was sort of invested in it, but there were also times where I was just kind of like, I don't know if I really want anything to come out of Tsukimi and Shu. As cute as they could be, like, you could tell that like the relationship just kind of happens. I don't really know how to describe it. Like, there's not really a lot between them.
Right. And I think it's a matter of that kind of pressure, right? They both kind of have a pressure on them.
Yeah.
And Shu's is that he needs to be married because he's a politician, and Tsukimi is, well, somebody likes me, so I guess I should go for it because this is never going to happen again. Which is nonsense. But,
yeah.
But like there's that kind of internal pressure, and that's the only thing that really brings them together, I think. And I agree, there's not much more to it, and so I felt the same. Like, I didn't really want anything to come from that relationship.
I'm kind of just suddenly realizing, like, that's the point.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like, the more we talk about it, I feel like I'm learning more.
So, just to chime in on my thoughts on the Tsukimi-Shu relationship here, is that, like, when I was originally reading the series as it was coming out, I was definitely into Tsukimi-Shu. I did think that there would be a cute couple, and, I was invested in, like, the whole plot of Shu going to Italy to find a wedding ring for her, and I did find all that, like, charming romantic, but in rereading the series, especially, I do really appreciate that it did not culminate in any characters coupling up, because I don't think that the story needed that. Like, this story wasn't about these characters, finding each other through, like, romance and that necessitating them getting married or becoming a couple or anything. It's like them finding themselves just being around other people and interacting with other people. And it didn't have to, result in a big wedding thing, which is why I really like in the final chapter how Higashimura, like, kind of preempts the reader's questions by saying, you want to ask if they get married? No need to get so hung up on societal conventions like that, right? Come on. Like, I really appreciate that about her and her attitude towards that, their happiness isn't defined by, like, who they fall in love with or, like, whether they get married or not. Like, their happiness is being comfortable in themselves and who they are as people. And then on another level, I'm glad that the Tsukimi-Shu relationship didn't, like, come together, because when you really get down to it, Shu doesn't know that much about Tsukimi.
Yeah, that was, like, a huge red flag for me, actually. I was like, no, don't marry this man. You'll be very bored. Yeah,
there's this big moment, like, on their first date at the restaurant that Hanamori takes them to. Shu is asking Tsukimi, like, about, like, what she does and, like, whether she works or stuff, and, like, he like reveals that he just thought that Tsukimi was one of Kuronosuke's friends from school, and then he realizes, oh wow, I don't really know anything about you, do I? But, like, immediately after this date, during this date, it ends with him telling her that he loves her. And then immediately afterwards, he decides he wants to get married to Tsukimi, and that's when he goes to Italy to get the wedding ring. Like, but even though he himself has just admitted he doesn't know that much about Tsukimi.
Yeah, that was like a huge. I'm like, slow your roll, buddy. You don't. This is not how relationships work at all. You really need to calm down.
Yeah, it really says something that they're basically both just kind of doing this because that's what's expected of them. Or especially in Shu's case.
And it's what they think that they have to do. And gladly they both come to realize that that's not what they need. That's not how their lives need to go. Like, their lives do not need to culminate in marriage, and that's not what their relationship needs to be either. Like, they can just enjoy each other's company as friends. And, like, they think about this idea of, like, all three of them, Shu, Kuronosuke, Tsukimi, living together. Just as friends. And so I really appreciated that a lot. that, they get the emotional maturity. They realize they don't need to rush into things, and that they need to take some time to figuring out who they are as individuals first and peoples, and explore their passions, and become like more well-rounded people first before seriously considering like commitments like marriage or like, and stuff like that, which I really appreciated. And yeah, I mean, and also that whole idea of like not fitting into societal expectations, and like maybe that wouldn't be make for happier lives, is also kind of like reflecting this idea. Like when Shu is proposing this idea to Kurenosuke about all three of them living together, like Kurenosuke like asked, could his mom have lived with him back then if they had thought like that? If like his dad had thought like that, maybe he didn't have to be separated from his mother at such a young age and like go for a decade without speaking or seeing her. If they weren't afraid of like what the media thought about, oh, how scandalous, like Kowabuchi's lover is living with him and with his like illegitimate son and all that. Like they separated Kurenosuke from his mother, and that hurt both of them. And it's really moving that finally, like there's that scene like where Kurenosuke sees his mother at the exhibition they do at Amamizukan, and like he bursts into tears, and
and so did I.
Yeah,
right. I know. I was like, finally.
It's a real gut punch, and then
it is.
And it fits into that transforming thing later. Is that like after seeing his mother, and like he's dressed up in dresses partly because he was inspired by his mother, and like it's kind of his way of being connected to her. Because, like, several times throughout the series, it's remarked upon that Kurenosuke looks a lot like Lina when she was young. And so he feels a connection to her when he's wearing dresses that she would look good in, or were part of her wardrobe. And then she also bought a jellyfish dress because she wanted to have a connection to him as well, to Kurenosuke after so long. But then, like, in this moment, after seeing his mother again, like, he kind of transforms and, like, he wears, like, a suit when he, takes out Tsukimi to, like, the final hurrah of the exhibition. It's, like, another transformation for him that kind of is a sign of, like, his emotional growth. But, like, he's also going to be able to change as a person now that he has kind of gotten through this this huge emotional, like, struggle he's had that has kind of haunted him throughout childhood. Like, now that he can, like, kind of reconnect with his mother again, like, that can help him start growing as a person too.
Yeah, and there's this kind of theme of the previous generation symbolizing kind of the established norm, right? And then the main players in the story are all kind of finding ways that's, I mean, because the established norm has obviously hurt people, a lot of people, including that last generation. So it's kind of also a celebration of how, as each generation comes forward, they find ways to break down the harmful aspects of that, idea of that norm that, that prevent us from it, being ourselves or being with the ones we love or connecting with people. So yeah, there's just like, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, oh, right, and then that thing, and then that also, and then that. And it's been a while since I read it, too, so I'm remembering things all of a sudden, like, oh, right, that happened.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, when rereading the series, all sorts of feelings just came pouring into me all over again. It's such a beautifully crafted story, and there is so much to talk about. But I think we've gone on a little bit on time here, so we will dovetail it towards the conclusion. But there are a few things that I do want to address. One thing I want to bring up, because it was important to me, is that I really appreciated Nisha as a character. Because
yes,
it's so rare that you see like Indian characters in anime and manga series. But more than that, so often when Indian characters are depicted in other media, they are really baggage with stereotypes that, are like everything about the character is rooted in the fact that they are foreign and about these ideas about what it's like to be an Indian. And, as a kid, I loved, characters like Apu, the scant representation of Indians that we had, in whatever media that there was. But those characters came with the fact that, they came with stereotypes and like this idea of, Indianness. But Nisha is just allowed to be a character, and there isn't any, stereotypes attached to her. And not only is she allowed to be a character, she is allowed to be one of the most capable and smartest and wittiest characters in the series. I love her so much. Like, she feels like people that I know personally, and she wears saris and stuff, but she, like, her character is defined by her knowledge of, like, how well she knows the clothing industry and how smart she is and able to give advice to Koronosuke and the rest of the group about, like, best practices and like how they should run a business. She's just a really capable and smart businesswoman, and she's also just incredibly hilarious with her sarcastic wit and her Osakan accent.
Yeah, I love that they went for the Osakan accent too. Like, they were like, "Oh, you have an accent, but it's not going to be an Indian accent. Like, we're gonna make it, like, we're gonna be really absurd here."
Yeah, I really appreciate Higashimura for including her as a character, and it's because, not only is Indian representation in media outside of India so scant and, so baggage and stereotypes, but, like, Indian women aren't, usually given such a proactive role or prominent enough in other media as well. So, like, for Nisha to have such a prominent role in Princess Jellyfish, and, like, for her to have such a strong character, to be, like, one of the smartest and funniest characters in the series, was really meaningful for me, and I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. I wish she was in the anime.
Yes, I wish. I want a Princess Jellyfish remake so they can cover the whole story, because I want to see the entire story. I want to see all of Nisha's moments, but I also want to see that entire last third of the series with Kai and the Singapore arc, because that is, I think, maybe my favorite part of the series, because that's where, like, all the themes come together in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, I personally thought that's where the story, like, got the most interesting, definitely. Not that I didn't enjoy anything before then, but it really, like you said, that's really where it felt like everything just kind of came to a head, and you really kind of started to understand where the story was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband and I watched the anime together, and he's only seen the anime, and every now and then I just turn to him like, "There's so much more.
Yeah, there really
There's
is.
so much you don't know about." Like,
it's a shame they ended the anime the way they did, because they ended the anime with Chiego's mom saying that she's not selling out a Musicon, which, kind of prevented the fact from making direct sequels, continuation to that first anime adaptation. So they'd have to start from the scratch if they were to do it again.
Yeah.
I feel like never say never. We could probably get a reboot one day.
Princess Jellyfish has had a lot of adaptations. It had a live action film adaptation. It's had a live action drama. And I hopefully, like, if they do make an anime adaptation, they'll have Nisha played by an Indian actress, because we talked about this on the show, but in that TV drama, they had Nisha played by a Japanese actress, like, in basically Indian face. So that was not good. I was really disappointed when I heard that.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
I didn't know that.
Especially since the movie apparently had Nisha be played by an Indian actress. So it's so disappointing that the TV drama didn't go that now.
Oh, that's really disappointing.
Yeah.
That's really bad. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I'm so, like, traumatized now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But we've lavished a lot of praise on Princess Jellyfish, that I do want to bring up a few, just briefly, some points of the story that I was not as happy with this time around. And this mainly, I think, has to do with the Inari subplot, or Inari as a character, I think, is the one I'm most disappointed in. Because I think it falls into the most harmful stereotypes of any character in the series, like that as, like, this businesswoman who will, like, sleep around to get ahead, which I think is a really kind of harmful stereotype. But also, I think that her relationship with Shu has a lot of problem areas, because not only does she basically, like, molest him and blackmail him with, like, pictures of them sleeping together and, like, tricking and, like, kind of, like, manipulating him into thinking that they slept together. Like, not only is, like, she, being abusive in that way, but also later when she pretends to be overdose on pills and stuff,
like Shu slaps her and like punches her a lot, and that's physical assault. I feel like for her character, it would have made sense if she exploited him for that. If she used that against him, but that's not the direction the story goes. Instead, like that becomes like a moment of infatuation where she falls in love with him. And I was just not comfortable with like that, a romanticization of like abusive action. Like that is...
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
That is the romanticization of physical assault, and like her, like when she thinks about that moment and she starts blushing later on, and that's the moment where she like starts to fall in love with Shu, and I just was not comfortable with that at all. And like if Higashimura had explored it in a way that kind of psychologically like got to the heart of like why that would be something that would make her feel attracted to Shu in an interesting and also responsible way, that would have been one thing. But that's not where the plot goes. Like, Inari's a character, like, she basically kind of falls to the wayside as an antagonist, like, as the series goes on, and the relationship with Shu is kind of just, like, very abruptly stopped as a subplot, as it focuses more on Shu and Tsukimi becoming closer. And then, it just does not resolve itself in a satisfying way. And so I didn't think that was the one major thing in Princess Jellyfish I think Higashimura didn't handle well, and handled in a way that I thought was felt uncomfortable and irresponsible, and hopefully would be something that she'd improve on in her other works.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly forget about Inari, which I think means that she's kind of unnecessary.
She's kind of a means to an end.
I want to like her as a character, and there are things I like about her. Like, she is good at her job, even if she uses questionable practices to do it. And she is fighting against, a sexist system. Like, her boss is making moves on her. So she is staying, like, strong in the face of like being this shitty company and stuff. So I want to sympathize with her, like understand where she's coming from as a character. But I think out of all the characters in Princess Jellyfish, she's the one that Higashimura doesn't let us get into her head enough, and doesn't like let us explore her motivations enough. And I think that does a disservice to her as a character.
I think that having such a breadth of diversity of women makes me feel a little bit more okay with her being the way she is. But I agree. I think she could be a very interesting and complex character. And I think that at some point, she was kind of a means to an end. Like, she didn't really come full circle. We didn't really get a satisfying conclusion with her, or really understand what's going on with her. Yeah, like mentally and emotionally. My guess as to why she started becoming attracted to Shu at that point is because he kind of stood his ground.
Yeah.
And I think that that hadn't happened to her before, and I think that's kind of the, like the men that she manipulates don't usually come back and say, no, you can't do this to me anymore. I agree, I don't think it was handled well. I don't think that it's obvious that that's what is happening.
If he had just yelled at her to say, stop it, don't toy with my feelings like that would have been something that I could get behind. But, like, he slaps her and then punches her several times. And it's played as a comedic slapstick bit. Like, the punches part, the slap is dramatic, and then there's a panel of him, like, punching her, which is, like, played as a joke with slapstick comedy. But, like, that's physical assault. And Princess Jellyfish is, like, such a grounded series for the most part that moments of physical violence like that, like, feel uncomfortable because you consider it in a real world setting more than you would in, like, a Rumiko Takahashi series where, like, characters are more crazy and it's more fantastical and stuff.
It would have been one thing for, like, a slap just for, like, dramatic effect. I think personally I could have maybe overlooked that, but, like, yeah, everything else after that is pretty unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can totally understand kind of having that physical reaction immediately upon realizing that you've been duped by someone and you thought they were going to die, right? And, like, you're so frustrated that you just hit them. I can understand, like, that. But then you follow that with, you terrified me. Like, you know, like, why would you do that? I'm sorry that I hit you, but, like, because I could see that happening in real life, too. Like, you just, like, it's like a conditioned response, right? You're so like shocked that you need to act out. But yeah, I agree. I had kind of forgotten. Like I said, it's been a while since I read it, but I had forgotten about that. I didn't like that part either. I think it also made me kind of feel like Shu. It made me like him less. And it made me kind of see the ways in which he's coded as a symbol of a kind of traditional patriarchal Japanese society. Because I do think that there's still a certain amount of, I mean, this is, again, I don't know for sure, but, it's not like this is the first time I've seen hitting in a manga, hitting women. And I don't think it's usually with a lot of criticism. I think it's usually just kind of, it just happens, like somebody gets hit sometimes. And I wonder if that's an issue in Japan. I don't know what domestic violence is like in Japan or how it's talked about. My guess is not a lot, because I think that there are a lot of social issues that don't get really dealt with, at least not publicly, in Japan, because it's all about, we've got to kind of conform and keep peace, and I understand that desire. So I wonder if some of that is just kind of, Shu is as the symbol of the next generation of this patriarchal society, but it definitely did not make me feel good about him as a character. And as soon as he did that, I was like, he cannot marry Tsukimi. Like, I'm not okay with that. Like, I was already not into it, but I was really like, are you kidding? You would just do that to somebody? You would just hit them? And somebody you don't really even know that well, right? It's not like they, like, I don't know. Not that you should hit people you know well, but at least, like, if you hit somebody you know well, there's, like, a whole lot of stuff going on. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think physical violence can be condoned in any case.
It's not necessarily justifiable, but it'd be more understandable, I guess.
It'd be more understandable, for sure. I mean, I still overall enjoy Shu as a character and what he represents. I definitely agree with you, Morgana, that he's like this representation of these old value beliefs and patriarchy being like perpetuated, and he in the next generation. And then throughout the course of the series, he is where he takes a long time, but he does, after Tsukimi rejects him, kind of ultimately realize that he does not have to follow in these as well. And that he does not have to follow in the path that his father has laid out for him and the rules and groundwork he's laid out in the same way Koronosuke hasn't. So I do appreciate his development, but like that moment, definitely, I wish there had been some consequences for him. I wish, Inari as a character had reacted to it in a different way.
Yeah, either consequences for him or like a real apology, like a real, like, what I did was really out of line. And I mean, like, what you did was also really out of line, but like,
yeah, like a dramatic apology, like a really serious scene. Like it's hand waved in a comedic, kind of a comedic panel where they're awkward against each other. You think, oh, I'm sorry for hitting you. And then she's like, Inari's being like awkward because she's being flustered because she has a crush on. Like, I wish it had been more of a dramatic, serious moment of like apology than what Higashimura put in.
I'm kind of surprised with Shu being the way he is. He didn't just immediately apologize right after hitting her, even if he was upset.
Yeah,
it just seems kind of out of character for him, almost.
Shu is such a polite person normally, and also generally a considerate person, so it's a really out of character moment for him.
I definitely agree. It was very out of character, and again, that kind of made me again wonder. Okay, how is he then with his relationships with women? Because you don't really see him interacting with his mom a whole lot. You kind of see him interacting with Koronosuke's mom and with Tsukimi, but you don't see him interacting with his own mother very much. And it just made me wonder, like, when you are close with someone, and like he thinks that he slept with Inari, right? So when you're close with someone like that, when you've been intimate with someone, does that make you feel like you can treat them any way that you want? Like, how does that, and is that again the kind of the public face of the Japanese man, and then like the private face of the Japanese man? Was that supposed to symbolize? And if so, I can buy that symbolism, but it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This isn't me trying to be like, oh, well, Shu did nothing wrong, but I really want to believe with what we're presented that hopefully that was just like a one-time thing. Like,
yeah, I think that was definitely uncharacteristic of Shu. He does, because from what his character had presented as before and then after, he never does something like that again. And he seems to have a healthy relationship with Lena. Like, he's her main point of contact in finding out like what's going on with Kuranosuke and stuff. And apparently he's had conversations with her and like kept her up to date.
And that's an interesting relationship, actually. You know, like having a relationship with your father's mistress long after she's gone because, you know, she's your brother's mother. You know, that's a really interesting relationship. And he does treat her very well and is very kind and very careful about his contact with her. And so, yeah, I think he is a very considerate person. So, yeah, so that whole scene was, I don't know. I had forgotten about it, and now I'm mad about it in retrospect.
It's just so out of character that, like, hopefully we can just kind of chalk it up to him just overreacting and him, again, it being just a one-time thing and not overly representative of his character. At least I would hope so.
And from a meta perspective, maybe Higashimura had an idea with that she originally wanted to do that just ultimately didn't pan out as the story shifted in different directions.
Yeah, that's possible too.
It really felt like Higashimura just didn't really have much else for Inari to do after her role was done.
Yeah. Which kind of surprised me. I thought that she would kind of have a redemption arc sort of thing. I was kind of banking on that, like that she'd be like, I've done terrible things to people in the name of business, and I would like to make amends, and I would like to like really explore having an honest relationship with somebody. Like I really thought that would happen.
Yeah, I wish it would have happened.
I'm kind of fine with her leaving the story at one point. I never really personally, I never really found her that interesting, so.
No, I didn't either, but I guess I expected that to happen because it seemed to set itself up that way.
Especially since Higashimura gives so much attention and empathy for other characters in the series who have like arcs that ultimately culminate in growth. Like Hinari was like a prominent character in the early manga, so you would expect that she'd also have a fully realized character arc and growth as a person, like, you know, other major characters. At the very least, I'm glad that the manga did not like push Shu Inari like the anime did in its conclusion, where like they're on the plane together and it's like, oh, maybe they'll get together.
Yeah, no, I think that's ultimately a doomed relationship. Yeah. Also, I'm not sure Shu is ready for relationships with women. I feel like he's got to do some work.
Yeah.
He's a nice boy, but I think he needs some time.
Yep.
But I think that about covers our discussion of Princess Jellyfish. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about the series with us, Morgana.
Thank you for having me. I had a really great time. I obviously enjoy talking about Higashimura's work.
I'm glad. I'm so happy that finally we were able to devote an episode on Princess Jellyfish and talk about it as well. And it's so nice to talk about the things you love with other people who love them.
Yeah, we'll have to put you down for a Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls episode at some point.
Please do. I feel like I could talk about it forever. I won't stop. I mean, like on the Manga Machinations podcast, I wouldn't stop talking about it. I've written a post about it. I'm down. Anytime anybody wants to talk to me about Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls, I am ready.
Mm-hmm. And where can our listeners go to read more of your thoughts on Tokyo Tower Rebel Girls and follow what you're doing on social media?
Yeah, so I run the website, mangamaven.com, and that's where I put a lot of my writing and my thoughts. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter, at Morgana, Morgana, Relina, Rhalina. I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah, that's where I'm at. And otherwise, you can come visit me at Comicopia, in Boston. We're in Kenmore Square. Or at Anime Boston at our booth. That seems to be like the best place, I think the most populous place that we're located. So, yeah.
Definitely go follow Morgana on Twitter, visit her blog, and pay her a stop by at Comicopia.
Yeah, tell her that the Manga Mavericks sent you.
Yeah, please do. I would love to tell these guys that you've listened to them. You've listened to their profound advice.
And if you haven't read or bought Princess Jellyfish yet, please do at Comicopia.
Yes, that'd be great. We definitely have it in stock. I absolutely make sure we have it in stock.
There you go. No excuses, guys. Head on out there.